Hello, and welcome to A Beginner's Guide to Agrippina. Agrippina was composed by George Friderich Handel and is sung in Italian. It is composed in the Baroque style, which for opera means something very special. Not only is the orchestration very ornamented, and not only are there some unfamiliar sounding instruments, such as the harpsichord, but the important thing when it comes to Baroque operas is the double aria structure. So whenever there is an aria in a Baroque opera, it will follow an ABA structure, meaning that there will be the main melody, which I like to think of as kind of the refrain of a modern song, and then the B section, which will form some sort of a bridge. It's a new melody, new lyrics, leading you somewhere else, and then back to the A section again. That melody and lyrics that you heard at the beginning will appear again a second time. But that second time around, the singer then has license to ornament that melody. This means that whenever you hear a Baroque aria sung by two different singers, you will not hear the same melody, because each singer might choose to add different variations to that second A melody, depending on what they are good at. Are they good at trills? Are they good at scales? Or it might depend on what sort of emotion they want to produce in their sound. So what is Agrippina all about? Well, it is about the Roman royal family during the time of Emperor Claudius. When the opera opens, Agrippina receives the news that her husband, the Emperor Claudius, has been drowned. She then kicks into high gear to try and get her son, Nero, onto the throne. It's important to note here that Agrippina was Claudius's second wife, and Nero was her son from a previous marriage. Scheming, conniving, double crosses, and love triangles all ensue that make for a blackly funny and yet eerily familiar comedy. Some historical background. This opera premiered in Venice in the year 1709, but it's not entirely accurate to Roman history. All of these characters existed as real people, but not necessarily this plot. Handel was asked to write this opera by a friend who wanted to use these ancient characters in order to lampoon contemporary Venetian politics. That way he couldn't be censored or thrown in jail for treason or sedition. Based on what I have read, however, the ancient Roman rulers were just crazy enough for similar events to have been possible. Now we come to my favorite section, which is aria analysis, or major musical moments. The first aria I have chosen is Non ho cor che per amarti, which is sung by Agrippina herself. It translates loosely to, there isn't enough heart to bear my love for you. My love is too great to fit in just my heart. She sings this to Poppaea, with whom everyone is seemingly in love. Ottone, the naval captain, is in love with her, and she is in love with him. However, both Claudius and Nero are also in love with her, and Agrippina knows all of this. And she has just convinced Poppaea to dump Ottone because she says Ottone has been cheating on Poppaea. This is not true, but it suits Agrippina's plans. After convincing Poppaea around to her way of thinking, she comes out with this aria, talking about how much she loves Poppaea and how she will always be a true friend to her. The beautiful thing about Baroque arias is that there aren't very many lyrics, so that really gives you a great idea of the text. So now you can really dive into the music and what the music underneath those lyrics is trying to tell you. There is, of course, a regal type of pomp throughout, as befits Agrippina, but her protestations of love become almost sickly sweet, and the repetitions of a te towards the end of the A melody can become almost threatening, as they always land on those unresolved chords. So you know there's something more behind what she's saying. My favorite piece is just after those ates. Agrippina has this wonderful, weaving, undulating melody of just 4 notes. They're 4 notes repeated. Bottom, 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 bottom. And it becomes, to me, it feels almost snake-like a snake weaving through the text. To me, that motif symbolizes Agrippina's lies and her manipulation. I have attached a clip of Joyce DiDonato singing this full aria from a recording, along with some lyrics, which have side-by-side translations. Next, I have included the aria Cade, mondo, which is one of Claudius's arias. And I have attached a recording of Luca Pizzaroni singing Claudio from the same audio recording, again with a translation separately. Cade, mondo is Claudius's triumphal march into Rome, addressing the people, talking about how wonderful it is that the empire has yet again expanded and the Britons are now under Roman control, and how fortunate they are to be under our rule, and every world will fall to our empire. It is sung as a slow march, but it has a fierce energy behind it in the orchestration. Lots of accented downbeats. The fact that his opening melody sinks very far downward. He is a bass to start with, but it goes very, very low quite quickly. And that, to me, intimates authority and the fear and gravitas of a monarch. However, in other moments, Claudio is painted as rather a fool and rather a buffoon, or at least he can be. So one has to wonder, is this Claudius being Emperor Claudius? Is this him putting up a front to protect his own image? Or is it him putting up a front for himself and making himself feel that yes, he is successful and he is important? Also, you have all of the irony of the ruler, the conqueror, proclaiming that the conquered are fortunate to be under his rule, when everyone knows that the conquered are never fortunate to be conquered. The next aria that I absolutely adore is Quando, invita, donna, l'amante, which is one of Nerone's chief arias, Nerone being Nero. I have attached several clips for you to watch, the first being a performance of this aria by mezzo-soprano Malena Ernman. Yes, Nerone is a pants roll, so it can be sung by a mezzo-soprano or by a countertenor. But Nerone's voice is written to be quite high in order to show that he is a lover and that he is quite young. This aria comes after Poppaea has invited Nerone back to her apartments. Nerone is quite pleased with this. He thinks he's in with a chance. But we know as the audience that Poppaea is starting to stir up schemes of her own, of which this is step 1. As it is about being invited back to a lady's room, the melody is quite slow and quite sensual, but its minor key convinces us that it has a slightly darker tone, that Nerone isn't being romantic here, it's just being rather selfish. Here the lyrics also prove that some men's attitudes have not changed at all in terms of feeling very entitled when it comes to women's invitations. He reads way more into Poppaea's invitation than she said, and she of course planned it that way, but Nero doesn't know that. My favorite thing about this piece is how you can play with that sensuality and that darker side of things. Malena Ernman goes for a quietly unhinged tone. However, in the same production, when it was revived recently at the Met, Kate Lindsay took that same darkness and sensuality and turned it into something more fierce and more animalistic. And I've enclosed a picture so you can see what I mean and compare the two. So it just goes to prove that every production is different. Even if it has the same set, the same orchestration, the same choreography, every singer will bring something different to a role. The thing that made this aria get the most buzz recently in the Met's recent production is that Kate Lindsay, in the repeated A section of this aria, had to begin that second A section while in a side plank, which is notoriously difficult. So I have linked a video down below from a fellow mezzo-soprano who also saw this production and was floored by Kate Lindsay's athleticism and singing abilities. And so she decided to try something similar herself to see just how easily can it be done. And of course, it includes a clip from that production, so I would encourage you to watch it. Perhaps the best aria to analyze in this entire opera is the aria which directly follows Nero's Quando invita la donna l'amante, which is Agrippina's Pensieri, which quite simply means thoughts. And the opening lyrics of the aria are Pensieri voi me tormentati, or thoughts, you are torturing me. And so this piece is very Lady Macbeth-like, as Agrippina is alone to wrestle with her thoughts and her conscience. And so thus there are many long-held notes, and there are slow, torturous runs, and that mirrors her inner torment. My favorite is the interplay between Agrippina and the woodwind soloist. Often, Agrippina will sing a line, and the woodwind soloist will repeat exactly that line. And so it becomes not only a duet, but the fact that that woodwind represents her thoughts, that voice in the back of her head that's twisting the knife that little bit more. The other wonderful thing about this piece is that it doesn't strictly follow that ABA format. The aria is interrupted several times, which is unusual for any aria, especially a Baroque one. At first, it is interrupted by what seems to be the B section, which begins with Ciel soccorri, as Agrippina begs for heaven's help to help her secure Nero's place in the succession. However, it's not so much her begging as there's a swift tempo change, and it becomes fast and furious. Agrippina is pushing through to anger as though she could force her will to happen. However, as quickly as that section begins, it ends just as abruptly, because much as she can try and rant, she cannot break away from her thoughts. She cannot escape. Later on in the aria, she is also interrupted by a recitative. She interrupts her own thoughts with dialogue as she sorts out everything that is going wrong and all of the pieces that she needs to sort out to ensure that Nero's succession will go ahead. And she plots and she rages this is proof of her scattered thoughts. It's almost as though she's going through a breakdown, and you're seeing it and you're hearing it in the music. I have included 2 clips of this aria. The first contains a section of Pensieri as it was performed at the Metropolitan Opera last year by Joyce DiDonato. And the second is a recording from the audio recording that she also did last year, so that you can hear the piece in full. It helps to see how she acted it, but listening to it in full gives you so much more of an idea of how incredible an aria this is. The last aria I would like to talk about is another of Nero's arias, which falls towards the end of the opera, which is known as Como Nube. And again, I have included a clip of this down below. It does not contain the full aria, but it gives you an idea anyway of Kate Lindsay performing this aria at the Met last year. In this aria, Nero rants and rages about how he is going to leave Poppaea as punishment for her deceiving him. Yes, I will throw her aside like a cloud flies from the wind. I will move on so fast she won't know what hit her. But often whenever we speak like that, we're often lying to ourselves. We're forcing ourselves to think that we don't care when really we do a little bit. And so this aria has a frenetic energy to it, especially the A sections, which could be a couple of different things. It could be Nero's anger. It could be producing a wind-like sound, the fury of a windstorm, or it could be Nero trying to convince himself. Here, he is almost interrupted by his own B section, as it is performed at a much slower tempo than the A sections in the Met's production, which is the only one that I have seen so far. I don't know if that is written into the score, as I don't have one, but that change of tempo really interrupts his thoughts, and thus also proving that his thoughts are scattered just as much as his mother's. And thus, is he fighting with himself over how he feels and how he should react? Overall, this opera gives you so much to break down, but the best way to delve into it is to listen to it or watch it and always be asking yourself, who is telling the truth? And who is lying? After that, because that's a very slippery question in any opera, but especially in this one, if you've determined that a character is lying, you have to ask yourself, to whom are they lying? And why are they lying? That will give you a myriad of points to explore. In order to experience this opera for yourself, I would recommend 2 different productions. The first is the production that was done at the Met last year in February and March of 2020, starring Joyce DiDonato, Kate Lindsay, Matthew Rose, Yestin Davies, and Brenda Davis, among others. This was a wonderful production. I got to see it in the movie theaters. It was just incredible. It is performed in modern day dress in order to draw parallels between the bad behaviors of ancient Romans and the bad behaviors of modern politicians. Just goes to prove that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Luckily, the Met will be streaming this production for free on their website on Sunday, March 21st. So if you get a chance, go watch that production. It is wonderful. If you are watching this after March 21st and did not get a chance to see that production, the next best thing would be listening to this audio recording. It is a full cast audio recording of the opera, also starring Joyce DiDonato, along with Luca Pizzaroni, Franco Fagioli, Elsa Benoit, Jakub Josef Orlinski, Andrea Mastroni, Carlo Vistoli, Biagio Pizzuti, and Marie-Nicole Lemieux, as well as Il Pomo d'Oro Orchestra. which is a, I believe, period correct orchestra. It is a wonderful recording, and you will get to hear all of these arias in full. Many of the arias have their translations on the website that I linked, which is leader.net, so that you can follow along with the action. Even better, if you purchase the audio CDs, it comes with a full libretto booklet, so you really can follow along. Of course, any other production that you find is sure to be wonderful and will give you insight into the same questions that I posed to you here. Let me know down below if you are inspired to watch Agrippina, if you have seen it or listened to it and you have anything that you would desperately like to talk about. I always love hearing from you. And until next time, be safe, be well, and happy listening. Bye everyone.